20% of their time on their top priority activities. Get this, women are at 22%, men are only at 18%. So they're working fewer hours, and during those hours, they're spending a higher percent of their time on their top priority activities. Women are better at managing their time than men.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thanks for joining me for the podcast where personal stories can have a global impact. Speaking of global, this show is heard by listeners in 32 countries, including Canada, where our guest, Mark Ellwood, joins us today. Hello, Mark, and thank you for being here.
Nice to be here, Melvin.
All right, you're a graduate of McGill University, and some famous people have gone to that Montreal University, including William Shatner, Justin Trudeau, Leonard Cohen, and James Naismith, the inventor of basketball. Did you invent any sports at McGill?
Did I invent any?
Yes.
I don't think so. I've invented a couple of team building games. I'm doing one this Sunday, but not any sports. So
Okay. Well, you got to work on that.
yes.
Get your name up there with James Naismith. Okay, so down to the serious questions now. We're here to talk about time management. That's your specialty. So your time management skills started when you were a child who delivered newspapers. Did the other kids
certainly did. Yep.
Did the other kids hate you for being so much better at your job than they were at theirs?
Well, let me tell you the story about that. So I was just 10 going on 11, and I was delivering the afternoon newspaper, and about 7 or 8 of us paper boys, it was all guys, met in Mrs. Smith's basement. It was an apartment building. She was the apartment manager, and so we'd meet in the basement. All the papers would get delivered there in bundles, and she would sort them out and put them into different piles for us. We would take those piles and then in turn deliver them to our customers. She was quite organized with all this. Well, on the weekends, there was not just the newspaper, but there was a colored insert magazine as well. They were published separately. And so as a newspaper boy, you had to deliver together those two pieces. So you'd sit there and put the magazine inside the newspaper and then deliver those as sort of one unit. Well, I watched these guys, and boy, they were so inefficient, with putting one in the other. And I just thought, well, this looks fun. Let's see if I can find a faster way to do this. This is classic time and motion stuff. How do you move this piece from there as quickly as possible? I bet I could still do it today. And so I guess maybe that was my grounding in productivity work, thinking about how to get those inserts into the papers as fast as possible. Well, then I started a whole bunch of other things I wanted to get home as fast as possible and, study or whatever I was doing, play sports, tennis. So I did a few other things. Well, we all invest in technology, right? I invested in technology. I bought myself a wagon. So I could, instead of hauling these papers, they're pretty heavy on paper bags, I had the wagon to pull along. So that certainly helped. Then there's another technique. Maybe people don't know about newspaper boys, but if you watch them in old movies, they're usually tossing papers from a bicycle or something like that. It's tricky to do. But if you fold the paper up in a certain way, it is tossable. You want to toss underhand, not overhand. Somehow overhand, it would fall apart, but underhand toss is the way to do it. Not that anyone's ever going to do this, but nonetheless, that would save you some steps. But here's the thing. How long does it take to fold the paper and make it grip itself versus how many steps do you save? So you're doing a little bit of a calculation there. The other one is I'm dragging the wagon up one side of the street, but I'm delivering the papers to customers on the other side of the street. Okay, so do I take 2 of them papers with me or come back to the wagon? So this is it's called operations research. How do you schedule things so that you're, making as few steps as possible? And then the big one, I eventually delivered newspapers in an apartment building, and I think I had 120 customers, of which I had to collect from them every single week. I'd knock on the door on Tuesday night. Hi, it's Mark, collecting for the paper. And boy, that took a lot of time. So I divided the route in half. No one told me how to do this. I just figured it out. So I went to half of the route on weeks 1 and 3, and the other half on weeks 2 and 4 to collect. So I'd collect for 2 weeks at a time. And so that cut down on my collecting time. There was one other thing I could have done. Some of the people paid at the office, and this is quite decades ago, and so paying remotely or there's no internet. But some people did pay somehow directly. They got an invoice and paid through the office. So I never saw them. I never knocked on the door. Now, maybe in retrospect, I might have encouraged more customers to do that because that would have saved on my collecting time. But you get more tips if you show up in person. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. So yeah, here I am, an 11-year-old, and those were all the things I was thinking about for being more productive. I mean, I didn't call it that at the time, but I guess I always just had this inclination to think about being productive, and my paper route was the way to start all that.
That's interesting. So, what did you learn then, and what have you learned since about the best outcome for effective time management?
Well, I learned that you can make a difference. You can create those systems. You can plan your time better. You can use technology and schedule your work and so on. So, that's what I learned. So then as an adult, I always had to get up early and be on time for delivering newspapers. So something in me just said, well, you got to be on time. And so turns out that I was at a meeting as I worked as an employee way back, and everybody in this company was always late for meetings. It was just like the part of the culture that people wouldn't show up and would be waiting for our boss. And I stood there, and there was 4 or 5 of us, and I said, oh, this is terrible, and they all agreed. And I said, if you take your time and his time and her time and my time and multiply that by our salaries, this would add up to a lot of expense that we're waiting here in the 5 or 10 minutes that we're waiting. I said, boy, maybe we should just track all that and how much it takes. Or, well, wait a minute, there's other things you could track too. Or, you could have a little device like a chess clock in reverse. Instead of tracking just a couple of things, you'd track a whole bunch of activities, and you'd add up with a series of stopwatches. You'd add the time that you spend working on all these different activities. So that was a kind of an aha moment for me. And I thought of this sort of a little electronic device. Well, one thing led to another. So eventually I launched, for those who are watching, here is the TimeCorder device that I invented. It's a small electronic device. And every time you begin a different activity, you just press one button. So you press that one, it's tracking on selling time, and that one on travel time, and so on. So the journey to launch that was quite complicated, but I used that device. I lend it out to employees. They track their time, and I analyze how they can become more productive.
Can you be good at managing your time and still occasionally miss deadlines and show up late to meetings?
Yes, I mean, look, we all run into challenges, and the bus broke down, or my child was sick, or something like that. So, things happen to all of us, and everybody with whom you're working has to recognize that things will happen. If they are consistently happening, if you're consistently late, then you are going to deal with someone who's doing that. Then you got to look inwards or look at that employee and say, gee whiz, maybe we got to fix this here. So I think we all need some flexibility to be able to deal with those different things that happen. But if it's consistent, then some remediation needs to happen.
Can a remote workforce compete with an on-site team for time management?
When COVID happened, a lot of people in my world were saying, oh, everything's different. Work is different now, and we're never going to go back to work, and so on. I didn't make those predictions. I thought, well, it's still kind of early on, and let's wait a little bit. And so what we've been seeing is return to work, it used to be 1 day, now it's 2 or 3 days, and some organizations are requiring 5 days. So I wrote a paper called The Future of Work, and I tried to examine that based on the time study data. And the paper dealt with a lot of other things, but I tried to calculate, all right, well, where is it best that people be in person? So I added up all kinds of meeting time and one-on-one time and so forth. I determined that was about 10 hours per week, which is more than a full day. So that suggested that maybe 2 days in the office would be optimal for doing a lot of those meetings and such. Well, of course, that's if you pack it all together. The challenge is those meetings happen throughout the week. But here's why we should work together or collaborate in person. One is that meeting time. Notwithstanding how good Zoom or Google Meet is, nonetheless, when you're in a room with people, you can see their body language better. You can interrupt each other. There's just a sense of being able to collaborate in a meeting that works better in person than online. Online works too, but it's better in person. The second reason is managers talk about doing direct feedback and walking around and dealing with the personnel issues and so on. And managers say that that's better done in person. There's a third reason, which is kind of, I guess, synchronicity. Just the idea that even though you're not in a meeting, somebody's over there talking to a client and you're over here and you're making sales calls or whatever. Just the idea that you're working maybe in a bullpen or maybe in a common work area, that you're picking up on each other's energy. You say, hey, Jim, you got that file? And so you're sharing information and so forth. And that's better done in person. So, there's reasons to work in person. Certainly, the fact that we are able to work remotely is terrific, because if you got a sick child or you're sick yourself that day or a snowstorm or something, then you can stay home, and that's terrific. But one guru said, if you can do all of your work from home, maybe you won't have a job in a few years. And I thought that was quite telling. I don't know if there's data for that or evidence, but just the idea that we work collaboratively in organizations, and that's best done in person. So we save on some commuting time for sure, and some expensive, gas you spend for commuting or whatever, and it's more convenient to be with your family. So those are the trade-offs. I guess while I don't try and predict the future, I like to think that in-person work does work better than remote work.
Okay. So a few minutes ago, you showed us your TimeCorder. Let's talk about how that was inspired and how you were able to get businesses in 31 countries to buy into it.
Well, it's interesting, lots of entrepreneurs try to figure out marketing, and my marketing was interesting. The TimeCorder actually turned out to be the world's most popular product that everybody thought somebody else should buy. So way back when I started, even though I was thinking about productivity, I had this idea that lawyers were going to buy the TimeCorder device. And there was an earlier version, by the way, that's the more recent version. And so maybe lawyers are billing for their time, so I'd create this little time tracking thing. This is, way before the internet existed. I launched it in 1989. So there was a few software systems and so on, not many. So I thought, well, this would be great for lawyers, and I marketed it to some of them. But they said, we have more complex needs and so on, and we need a detailed billing system. You really should be talking to accountants about this. So I did, and I was on a national TV show for entrepreneurs, and we had some accountants tracking their time. And they did, and they came back to me at the end and said, well, it's not quite right for us, but independent consultants, that's where you're going to do really well. So I talked to them, and the independent consultant said, have you talked to the lawyers? Everybody thought someone else should buy it. So that didn't work too well. So I had to pivot, and change to selling the service rather than the device itself. And so what I've learned, the sort of meta learning over the years, is that people aren't able to spend as much time on their high priority activities as they would like, and they're spending more of their time on their lower priority activities. And so, even with all the technology we've thrown at people over the years, um, that administrative time will still be a burden. And while I don't like to predict the future, I'm going to guess that if somebody's doing a knowledge worker job 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and many of those will get replaced or outsourced or automated or whatever, but to the extent that people are doing knowledge work jobs, managers, for instance, they will still be burdened by administrative time. And so the challenge is, how do you reduce that and spend more time on what matters most?
So, how did you collect 500,000 hours of real time data in a database?
Well, that's the clients come to me, back to that marketing thing. So I was going out and talking to people, and I'd knock on doors and whatnot. I found what really worked for me is Google AdWords, and there was a company that did that before them even. So if you type time study, you're going to find me, because I pay for to be on the first page. So that's how I do my marketing. And so I can't reach out to the United Kingdom. I'm here in Canada, but people find me, and so that's how people in a number of different countries have sought me out, and that's where my clients are from all over the world. And so I'm lending this out to 100 sales reps at one time, and they're using the device. I've got 400 of the devices. So I lend them out, they're tracking their time, and I analyze the results. Now, the obvious question people are asking is, well, Mr. Elwood, nice, you're from way back. How about an app? And I get that question all the time. And the big answer is, there's no business reason to develop an app. The biggest hurdle that I face is when people say, oh, our employees aren't going to like that. Well, they do. When you make it anonymous, when you make it easy, when the device gives instant feedback, we get a 94% participation rate. And if you can create an app, that's only going to go down. So the physicality of the device, it's better than an app for a whole bunch of reasons. It's there, it's physical, it's tracking the things you're doing on your phone. I don't want to do a big pitch here, but it's really how we think about people's engagement with technology and with tracking their time. And that this turns out to be a better tool than anything else out there. The challenge is people don't believe that. And so I've got to do a lot of convincing to convince people that, don't worry, your employees are going to love it. The results are anonymous. And so that's a little bit of a challenge for me, for sure.
All right. So, what is deep listening?
Deep listening. So I do some facilitation work as well. And so, in addition to the time studies, I'm helping groups figure out some direction and where they need to be going. So it's through training or through strategic planning. And what happens is you get a group of people in a room and someone says, well, we just don't have the budget for that. Or, nah, that didn't work. We tried that last time. That's not going to work. Those are sort of surface level comments. And so what you want to do in any conversation is try and probe a little bit deeper. And you listen for certain cue words like, oh, we can't do that, or that's interesting, or whatever. And you sort of probe deeper, and you find out that that didn't work last time. Oh, really? Tell me about that. Because maybe it did work, but it didn't work in the ways that you're thinking about or asking about. And so you keep probing more and more and more, and you get to the core issues. So it's a way of asking questions and simply being empathetic. And if you avoid open-ended questions, did that work for you? Was that successful? Instead of those are closed questions, sorry. But if you ask open-ended questions, tell me about what made that successful. Tell me more about some of the challenges you face. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Can you explain how that works? That's what deep listening is. And the follow-up questions that you ask to get people really engaged in a conversation. Anyone can do that. My famous example, husband comes home late at night and wife says, honey, where were you? Well, I was at work. Well, why didn't you tell me? Well, and you get this sort of back and forth yelling. And he says, well, I had to earn extra money or stay overtime or whatever it is. And if you get that conversation working well and people empathize, oh, so you're really concerned that I was late. Yes, because you didn't tell me. Oh, you wanted me to tell you that I was going to be late. Yes, because I really love you. Oh, somebody just said I really love you. You get down to these core issues about what's really important. And that's the key when someone says, because I really love you. Now you're onto something. It's less about how late you were staying at work, but about the real core of that relationship. That's where you want to get to with deep listening. And anyone can do it. Get yourself into an argument with someone. Just say back what they said. Oh, you just told me you're angry about this and you're angry about that. Yeah. And so people want to be heard. People want to be listened to. That's deep listening.
Okay. So what is the main point of being time efficient?
I mentioned that people aren't spending their time on their top priority activities. I tell people that you can take control rather than letting things take control of you. We ask people in a pre-questionnaire, what gets in the way of your productivity? Sometimes it's procrastination or filing or whatever, but often it's other departments or it's my boss keeps changing direction. And so the world is sort of coming at us with all these things that we have to do. And you need to recognize that I can take control of these activities rather than letting them control me. I can create my to-do list, and here's what I want to do today. When I go to a meeting, I can make a difference at that meeting, maybe not in the outcome or the agenda, but I can certainly create or control the dynamics. Hey, we seem to be off track here. Can we get back on track? Or I'm confused about what we just agreed to. What just agreed, got agreed? Or back to my original thing. Hey, we're all late. Let's get this meeting started. Even if we just have to do some updates on things, let's get something started so that when the latecomers arrive, they know they're late.
All right. So you've done some research over more than 3 decades on time management. Are men or women more efficient with their time?
What I discovered is that women are better at managing their time at work than men. There's a lot of data out there about at home where women are more responsible for domestic activities. So that's childcare and cleaning and cooking and shopping and so on. And in lots of Western countries, women are doing more of that. So I thought, okay, well, what happens at work? I've got lots of data at work, and researchers who study this don't have as much granular data as I do. So I took my database and split it in half. I put Sally, Mary, and Juanita in that group, and I put Bill and Harold and Melvin in that group. And so I looked at the differences, and I found there were 4 major areas where women's time was different from men. The first is that women work fewer hours. Now, these are knowledge workers doing office work and sales and service and so on. And so if the average is 46 hours per week, and that includes about 3 hours of personal time, because you're at the office and you need some personal time. So 46 for the average. Men are at 48, women are only at 45. So there's a difference. But the second finding was the most profound. If you read a lot of time management books, they all tell you how to track your time, but they don't report on the results. But they also tell you to spend time on your important and non-urgent activities. That's the so-called Eisenhower matrix. But it doesn't define what those activities are. So I thought, well, I could figure that out. So when I do my time studies, I give people a little questionnaire and say, what are the most important things you need to do in your job? And so I listed those, and track them to time spent. This sounds a little detailed, but anyway, if you ask a salespeople, they'll tell you, okay, I got to process orders and I got to service customers, but the number one thing they say is prospecting. And so I looked at 13 different jobs or job types and tracked, okay, what do you say you need to be doing and where's your time spent? The average is about 20%. So people are spending 20% of their time on their top priority activities. Get this, women are at 22%, men are only at 18%. So they're working fewer hours, and during those hours, they're spending a higher percent of their time on their top priority activities. Women are better at managing their time than men.
Okay. So, in a business setting, are emails a time saver or a time waster?
I'm cautious about using the word waste. I gets tossed around a lot. I wrote a paper on that and tried to define different types of waste. Having said that, I measured time spent on unnecessary emails, different from your regular emails. Turns out is 3.4 hours per week. That's a huge amount of time. Well, most of the emails that people spend, the other number of hours they spend on emails, it makes sense. Technological tools are useful, and some of them didn't exist when I started. Certainly email didn't. The internet, smartphones weren't around. The thing is this, we keep inventing more and more ways to be out of touch with each other. And so email makes a lot of sense, but there are those unnecessary emails. The thing is, there's no evil troll down in the basement sending out all these unnecessary emails. It's all of us. We all have to take responsibility for all those emails that we send around. And I once did a little survey. I was in a workshop, well, more than once, and I asked, how many bad drivers are out there? And if you survey the room, you get about a third, 20%, 50%, average all that is about a third. So people believe that 1/3 of the drivers out there are bad. So then you say, okay, would all the bad drivers stand up? Like one person does. So people attribute that bad behavior to others and not to themselves. Same with email. I'm getting all this stupid email. Well, you're probably sending out a lot of stupid email as well. So it makes sense as a tool, but people tend to abuse it. So what's the latest tool? AI. And I hear people going, oh, it's going to change jobs. Oh, it's going to be great for this and that and so on. And it is, and people are using it well. But they're also abusing it. There's bad players. There's people, there's criminals. There's all hackers and so on. So yes, I think AI will change some jobs, as did lots of computer systems. But there will still be that administrative time. There'll still be wasted time. There'll still be, the need to do all kinds of things with AI to make it better. So I'm in favor of technological tools, but I'm aware that there are those spin-offs and side effects that result as well, like email, and there will continue to be more. So I'm cautious about the latest tool. And AI is going to change our world. Well, yeah, but not always for the better. So we got to keep that in mind.
Okay. So I just have a couple questions left.
Sure.
You've written several books on time management and efficiency. And one of them is called The Poetic Path to Getting More Done. What's poetic about efficiency?
Well, so I was writing tweets. This is back when tweets were only 140 characters. And I thought, oh, well, I could write a whole series, do them in poetic form. So I was little rhyming couplets. And so I thought I'll put them all into books. So I've created an entire book called The Poetic Path. It's all poems. It's time management in poem form. I was trying to sell the book. That didn't work out, so I give them away at my workshops and stuff. Would you like to hear a poem about goal setting?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's glasses here. So there's something in time management called the SMART formula for goals. It's a way of defining your goals, and it's an acronym. And I twisted the acronym a little bit. So here is the SMART formula acronym. Know what you want and set a clear goal. Then start taking action and get on a roll. An acronym spells out a goal that is SMART. Just SM and A, then RT to start. Avoid being vague as you aim for specific. Be selective as well and not too prolific. Nothing is trivial, be substantial and clear. Be sure to aim high as you plot out the year. Measurable goals have a number you set, a quantified score that you haven't reached yet. Appropriate goals are ones you can match with your background and skills. You won't start from scratch. A realistic target should always be sought. A bit of a stretch, but not a long shot. Fix a date to achieve what you set out to do. Establish a time when you will be through. Objectives, intentions, commitments to meet, destinations, ambitions, and targets to beat. Commit to start now. Don't ever despair. The goal is your endpoint. It leads you somewhere. Bring passion to bear on what you pursue. Decide to excel in all that you do. Set a goal for today, this week, or this year. Pursue to the finish. You'll have reason to cheer. Why shouldn't we teach soft skills with poetry? So that's the approach that I took.
I'm impressed. I like that. It definitely had a cadence of a Dr. Seuss.
Yes, I get that comment. Well, he came up with a good formula. I wrote some limericks and I wrote some free verse as well in the book, but that cadence of the roughly 10 syllables certainly works well and is quite memorable for people, so it works.
I like it. I like it. So tell us about your other books.
The first one, wow, it's almost 25 years ago or more. It's called A Complete Waste of Time. Why not? And so what I did is I wrote a series of satirical stories and followed them with tips. I was reading one the other day, and it had a secretary who showed up, and I thought, well, nobody has secretaries anymore. But I guess I was trying to use humor because we need a little more humor in our lives, and to set up these situations. Here's one sort of joke, I suppose. I say that when you start a meeting, you should start on time. You shouldn't punish the people who made the commitment to show up on time and reward those who are late. Because when you do, that's like telling the early birds that the worms are on back order. A little bit of a joke. So anyway, the whole book was satirical stories, and it worked. I guess we just need a little more storytelling in our lives, and so that's what that book was all about.
That's the whole point of this podcast, to bring stories, to share people's experiences, and to leave them with some learning opportunities. So as a final question today, what is the best advice you can leave with my listeners today?
Quickly, on using a to-do list every day to plot your time and your activities. To-do list deals with the past, the present, the future. So future is what I'm going to do today. Then the present, oh, I got some time. What do I need to be doing now? And the past, at the end of the day, you can check off an item and say, yeah, I did that. And so quickly, I tell people, start with a blank slate. If you had nothing to do today, what would you do to affect your results a month from now? Oh, I'd work on that new project. I'd hire that person. I'd make some sales calls. Those are your top priority activities. They're going to take 20% of your time. So start with a blank slate. Ask yourself, what could you do to affect your results a month from now? Block your time off for those and fill in the things that you could actually complete today. That's how to use a to-do list. After that, then fill in all the meetings and reports and things you got to do. But focus first on your highest priority activities. If you do that, that's the way to be successful in managing your time.
That sounds great. That's a great way to end up this conversation today. Our guest has been time management expert Mark Ellwood, who's joined us from Canada. Thank you so much, Mark, for being our guest today.
Happy to be here.
Please go to my website at podcastreallife.com for some information about my guest and the things we discussed today. That's it for today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.